Actually, I mean, every time we fish together, we have to battle weather.
But we do find one good day.
We keep finding fish, though.
We do. Like, it's not like, hey, Pete, where are the fish today?
We don't need 3 good days of fishing, just one awesome day. Or the quest for the 12-inch fish day.
And
I'm starting it like this. All right, guys, so we're going to do a not quick breakdown. Alex and I have spent some time the last few days in Southwest Florida. So basically, I was sitting in Texas in the cold watching redfish, and Alex like, yo, dude, you should come to Florida. We'll go catch tarpon. We'll go catch snook. It's going to be warm. It's going to be some of the best weather on the planet. There's going to be fish everywhere. You got to come. And I was like, let's go.
I don't think I hyped it up that much, but...
No, that might have been in my head.
Yeah, I was like, hey, Pete, come on through to Florida. I know you're not doing anything in Texas. All you're doing is chasing black drum, some redfish. If you found a sheep's head, you'd catch it. Maybe. But I was like, come on down to Florida.
Texas permit.
We'll go on down to Southwest Florida. We'll play a little bit up in the Forgotten Coast area, and hopefully we catch some fish. But you know.
So I packed up the truck, loaded up the skiff, made the 15-hour drive from Texas to Tallahassee. Had an awesome steak.
Yes, I did feed you some good meat.
That was a really good steak. And we, after eating some steak, sat down and we did some plan. Well, first of all, we took a look at the weather and we were like, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Plan A.
Yeah. So essentially, Pete came on over to my home in Tallahassee where I currently reside. It's a lovely place. Highly recommend not living there, honestly, unless you're a college student or a bureaucrat. But yeah, I'm there right now with the intent of just being in an interesting location. I could jump to the mountains if I need to film some trout content, or I can head on down to the coast for some redfish. Everything's within 5 to 6 hours or so. But Pete made the drive on over, and we started sitting down and looking at weather as well as where we would be spending our first day or two. We ended up making an executive call. We were supposed to be fishing the Forgotten Coast first, basically hitting a closer zone, but the weather wasn't panning out.
The weather was not panning out.
No. So we made the executive call and we started heading on down south.
Yep. We decided we were going to go check out Southwest Florida. And so once we made that call, we did some serious intel gathering. We did some serious looking at charts, planning out our attack. I felt really good.
I felt confident. I was reaching out to buddies that have fished that zone for years upon years, trying to dial in, what's the game plan of attack? Run into mangroves, look for backwater ponds. Are we fishing, on sand flats, on grass flats? What's the move? And we came on into it with a solid plan. Start in the back and work our way up into some more oceanside stuff.
Yep. It was a solid plan.
It was a solid plan. But let's kind of break down that first day.
The first day.
So what did we start off with, Pete?
All right, so we dropped the boat in early, made the first run, which was beautiful. Headed up into the backcountry.
By the way, for anyone listening, that run, the best thing I can equate it to is Jurassic Park.
Oh, it's every time.
Yeah, it's the Amazon rainforest of the United States. So we made a 10-mile run first in the morning. and we ran back to some backwater ponds.
Yep. And then we got in there, and it was overcast, so sight fishing was not going to really happen. And once we got in there, we started poling, and didn't really see much at first.
No. It was barren.
It was slow, yeah.
It was very slow. We were seeing bait fish.
Yep. We were seeing a little bit, but with the overcast conditions, which we knew we were going to have in the morning, and we knew that it was going to burn off, so we weren't super worried about, all right, we're going to have a overcast blind casting slugfest. We knew we were going to get a break from that, but we wanted to make the best of it. So we started blind casting. We started off with a gurgler, blind casting up underneath mangroves, trying to pull a snook out. And just finally we kept working deeper, and finally I saw what looked like on the dark grassy bottom, what looked like this silver-ish color, half looked like a mud pluff, half looked like a log, and I was just like, I think that's a fish. And I'm sitting here contemplating whether or not it's a fish enough to tell Alex.
Oh, come on now. I put eyes on this fish, and let's just say I got overly excited. That
was like weird. I mean, that was still fairly early in the day.
It was very early in the day.
So it was like, oh my goodness, our plan's working.
40 minutes on into pulling around, going back into creeks, trying to figure something out. And a nice 22 to 24 inch snook just started moving across a bank. And I mean, it was a 60-foot cast, and I got a little overzealous, and I decided to sling that cast. I thought I made a pretty decent cast. I put it maybe about 4 feet in front of him, 2 feet past him.
But he was already, like, it seemed to me like as soon as that cast came in, he started like, I need to get out of here.
I'll restate that. Yeah, that fish got up and boogied immediately. I was hella disappointed. I was like, oh, this is going to be a perfect cast. As perfect as a 60-foot cast could be. But, I thought I put it in the right zone, gave it 2 ticks, and all of a sudden he just booked on out, kicked up mud, and I was like, this is how today's gonna go.
I was thinking to myself, I was like, all right, well, that's what they look like, but we're finding them. So, especially like when, I don't know, for me at least, when I have a game plan and I start pulling and I run into that first fish, it's like, all right, this is a sign of things to come. We found a fish. It's still early. We're doing the right thing. So, I was like that, what? You blow the first one out. We're going to go find another one.
I was definitely optimistic. I'm coming into talking about this with a pessimistic attitude. I screwed that up, but a pessimistic attitude is what I'm kind of talking with right now. And you'll understand why. Essentially, I saw that first fish, made the cast. I was pissed. Plain and simple. And I'm like, okay, Pete, that's what they look like. Let's just keep working. And we slowly went on into this next little cut. And lo and behold,
oh no,
there's fish.
There they go.
They started spooking off left and right. I'm making a cast and shaking them a little bit. I mean, we spooked 4 or 5 snook on out of that. And I mean, I've already looked at the GoPro footage.
Oh yeah. It was
they were not bad fish.
That looked like when you pull up into a little pond and you watch every single redfish get into a single file line and find the exit that you just came through as fast as possible. So, all right, well, that's where they were.
Yeah. But the fact that we found fish immediately in the morning was such an optimistic piece to the day. We needed that. Although we weren't able to put something together, we needed that. And so obviously we had found some sort of pattern and we wanted to replicate that. So we moved on into our next slot.
Yep.
And I think, we started a little bit off, still throwing the gurg, and we worked down this bank, came around the corner, ran into an alligator. Scared that alligator out. I'm trying to think about That's specific. Are you okay?
And then we kept pushing along. We crossed across that little bay and started pushing up that little cut. And we got towards the back where there was kind of not really a creek feeding into it, but it was a lot more of a protected little cove into this bay system.
Okay,
And,
I know what you're talking about now.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I threw the Gurg up way up into the back as best I could, popped it twice, and immediately it got smoked by a snook, to which, much to my demise and training, I decided to trout set it.
And I proceeded to absolutely ridicule Pete. Absolutely ridicule Pete.
Hey, every single person out west would have been so proud of that trout set. That's how you land a 24-inch brown trout.
It is how you land a 24-inch brown trout.
Not a 17-inch snook.
No, definitely not the most ideal scenario. And I mean, hey, if you're out in the water, you got to give buddies a hard time. Just grind it on into them a little bit more. But yeah, no, we found a little pocket and there were fish there. And so the optimism is still there.
So high.
It's so high. We're high on ourselves. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, little pockets, snook, gurglers, little bays and little bites are going to be holding fish in, shallower, sight castable water.
Yeah.
And I think what ended up happening is as we got on out of that little snook hole, we came around the corner and started seeing a bunch of life. And, you started blind casting because
there was like little tarpon rolls all over the place.
Yeah.
And we were just trying to slowly work up into them.
I'm sorry. I was thinking to myself, all these little juvie tarpon, and we couldn't catch one.
Hey, the juvie tarpon were being protected by a school of ladyfish
that was ferociously
attacking.
I think those ladyfish had the attitudes of Jack Creval's, or better yet, the gangsters of the flats. GTs. They were charging
all the way to the boat too.
Oh, you were shaking them off.
Oh my goodness. I put two of them in the boat. So we've landed fish at this point, which you can make it.
Yeah, give me a second. Oh, excuse me.
So yeah, I was able to put two ladyfish in the boat. They were I don't know, all of 12 inches on a good day. If you stretched them out.
You mean together? Like the two fish together was 12 inches?
Together. So, but hey, we had fish in the boat, so we were pretty pumped about that. We're still seeing.
Finally, we had fish in the boat. I was thinking to myself, like, at least we got something. We can't be skunked.
No.
We can't be skunked, not on our first day.
No, and sometimes you just get that first fish out of the boat, and it just kind of like calms everybody down. Like, all right, we got the fish out of the boat. I don't think a ladyfish quite does it the same way like a redfish will do. It still was kind of nice. But all right, we can catch a fish.
I was gonna say, at that point, I was kind of confident about the back. Yeah. Seen big snook, had snook literally eat your fly, and watch them go back down without a hook in their mouth because you trout set it. But anyways, but we ended up putting fish in the boat. And so as we're pushing on back to kind of chase after these tarpon, Pete is catching the ladyfish, trying to shake them off as quickly as possible. It's spooking the baby tarpon. They're very fragile animals. They don't like sound. They like being as far back as humanly possible, or as far back as fishable possible.
Yeah.
But as we're working on up towards this school of tarpon, we kind of had an unexpected visitor.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, so, back there, you can hear everything really well. So we start hearing a motor running kind of in the area, and we're listening to it, and it's getting louder, and it's getting louder. And we're like, all right, well,
they're not coming over here.
They're not going to come over here.
No. And if they come over here and they see us, they'll just turn around.
And then we see the boat come around the corner, and we're both watching it like, all right, he's going to come out a little bit more so he can turn around, and he's not turning.
Honestly, it looked like what does that sound?
The refrigerator.
Why? Why is the refrigerator running? Hey, Pete, is your refrigerator running?
Yes.
You better go catch it.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's a good joke. I like that one. As we're sitting there and we're contemplating if these guys are going to run by us, we finally got our first look at them. What'd you think of Jerry and Larry?
Oh my goodness.
The weekend warriors.
My initial thought was, what the heck are they doing back here in that thing? I mean, it was like
it was an old school boat.
Yeah, it was like, if you've seen like any of those like Carolina skiffs, but not the old school ones, like the ones that they decided to try to make a flat bowed bay boat out of, that just have gunnels that go up to your thigh.
Yeah, no, and did you notice it had like railings on it as well?
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like a whaler. Like, it was a weird boat.
I was like, what is that thing doing in here?
I think it's the boat that most Kansas residents think of to buy when they're like, hey, I'm going to be a snowbird in Florida.
They were from Kentucky.
They were from Kentucky, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas.
No, I saw I peeped their registration.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I was like, because that was what's going through my mind, is like, no self-respecting fisherman, like saltwater fisherman, is going to do that to somebody, because they all know, like, oh, all right, this zone's taken, I'm going to go find somewhere else. So I was like, these guys can't be from around here.
And we've done that in the past. I mean, at least you have.
Yeah, oh yeah. If I see somebody, and I think like they're even possibly working in a direction, like, I just go somewhere. Honestly, if I see somebody, I just go find a completely different part of the county.
Yeah.
Try to
just be considerate out in the water. Well, these guys absolutely blew past us and blew over all of our juvie tarpon that were rolling so happily.
They were so happy.
They were the happiest little fish of all time. It was great. They were making me smirk, smile, blush, whatever you want to call it.
I was so excited.
I was 75% confident that Pete was going to be able to get a juvie tarpon right there, and it got run on over by some jamokes from Kentucky. And you know what? Maybe they're great people. Maybe they're really nice, but they don't understand water etiquette. They obviously did not.
No. And yeah. Just
the thing that we learned was it doesn't matter where you go. Even in, a weekday, you could get run over by some Larry and Jerry from Kentucky.
So that was over.
Yeah.
So we immediately just basically packed up and decided we were going to move.
Yeah, and we decided to move to something a little bit more challenging. It was really similar to the first spot that we fished in the morning. Deep in a creek that led to a pond that had some creek systems flowing on into it. The wind was starting to pick up, so we wanted to stay protected as much as possible.
Yeah. So then we found ourselves in a cool little creek.
Oh, one of the coolest little creeks, at least I've ever been in.
Yeah.
That zone. It's loaded with, baby Goliath grouper, catfish, snook were actually coming on out of the mangroves. I thought I saw a redfish, but you know what? Maybe that was just my heart just saying, hey, where are you guys? I miss you. It was awesome, man. I mean, what do you think of like that experience from a Texas angler coming into like really tight quarters?
Honestly, I was thinking the whole time is, please stay open enough that I don't get the boat stuck in the mangroves. It's one of those, like, the whole time you're going through something like that, like in my mind, it's like, this is awesome. God, we're going to die. This is awesome. God, we're going to die.
Oh, man. I will say this. I think there's always a chance to get through the tiniest and littlest of creeks with a boat like a Sabine. I think there's always a chance. But I've also been in scenarios where you do have to turn back.
I've been in scenarios where there is no turning back, and you have to basically try to go in reverse the whole way out.
We'll talk about that at another time. All right, we'll talk about that at another time. Later, maybe a later one. But we finally got on into this zone, and it opened up into this beautiful pond. We had great sun. The clouds had burned off, and we were going to fish this leeward side that was nice and glassed over. It was just a really good looking pocket.
Oh yeah, I was pumped. From what we'd seen that morning, this looked super similar. We knew it hadn't been touched because there's no way some guys from Kentucky are making it up that creek. In my mind, and in my mind too, I was like, "There's no way anybody in a bay boat's gonna make it up this creek."
No,
which later,
yeah. Anyways,
but so I was excited. I was like, "There's no way these fish have been bothered if they're in here." We had a plan. We were gonna go get across. We were gonna get into the lee. We had sunlight. We had a plan. We knew we had untouched fish.
Everything was in our favor. And what did we find, Pete?
Rolling tarpon.
So the opportunity was awesome. One, I would say that opportunity presented itself super, super well. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, they were acting skittish.
You know what? I wonder if somebody had made it in there.
You never know when you go back into these backwater ponds if somebody or something has really disrupted that area. And these fish were in small pods, and you could easily see them slowly rolling with their backs out, occasional gulps for air. They were tarpon. It's about as easy as it can be. Yeah. They weren't the biggest tarpon. When most people think of tarpon, they think 150 pounders. We're talking about the ones that are 12 inches, maybe 16 inches, small juvies, the ones that look identical to the 100-pounders, but in a smaller form.
Yeah. You fit them in your pocket.
Or a fish tank at home. But that's illegal. Don't do that. Don't do that. So what was going through your head as, we started to come around that bank, and I'm like, dude, those are tarpon.
Yeah, so mostly it was a lot of try not to mess this up, and then a lot of excitement. And honestly, like, my heart was racing a little bit. I was super pumped. I was also like, didn't want to let you down. I wanted to get a tarpon.
No.
I'm like, don't mess this up. Just try to basically just don't mess this up.
Do you think you got too much in your own head?
Oh, if there's one thing I'm good at, it's getting too much in my own head.
Yeah, man. I could tell that because, straight up, after, trying to get them, trying to put those casts in. And again, there were a few casts that were right on target, right where they need to be. I could tell the frustration was built up on you. I think there was a time where I was asking you a question and I got zero response, and I was like,
"That's frustrated, Pete."
Ooh, Pete is not happy right now. No. So I did everything in my power to try and get you on something. I was feeling bad at that point. It's like, oh, the baby tarpon aren't cooperating. Why aren't the baby tarpon cooperating? This should be an easy, pie.
Oh, man.
But from my personal experience, if you're going to fish baby tarpon, they need to be very concentrated. And normally it's at a creek mouth where you've got falling tide or rising tide, where they're comfortable, they're rolling happy, not open flats, roaming around in little tiny packs, just schooled up.
Yeah.
It's definitely, I would say, the hardest scenario for those juvie tarpon.
Though they proved it, because we fished them till they quit rolling, and nothing.
The wind picked up.
That
was the biggest thing, and I noticed that too. The opportunity just did not end up coming to fruition. You did have a boil. I forgot about that. The first fish that you casted at, he came and swiped at the fly and went down.
So and then I think a lot of too, probably especially with that, a lot of that too was my personal inexperience with those kind of situations and not knowing what I'm looking at, not knowing. I mean, after seeing that, and for the second time that day, I realized we definitely so this is the second time that I've been able to come down to Southwest Florida, and I can 100% guarantee that we were finding juvie tarpon and we didn't know what we were looking at.
Yeah, what you're really looking for is that back. That back structure is really important. You could see the scales on their back with a darker fin on top. You can see the tips of their tails, and it's funny because juvie tarpon act identical to the big tarpon.
Yeah.
When they get 150 pounds, right, and they're laying up in a zone, they will raise their back up a little bit, and then they'll go back down. They'll tip their tails up a little bit. They'll go back down. They'll come up with their head really, like just enough to gulp really quickly and get down. They'll do it.
Yeah.
The baby tarpon, I think it's just in their DNA.
Just gotta get some air.
Gotta get some air, man. Shoot.
But yeah, I mean, definitely, like, I don't know. I think a lot of it, like I said, inexperience dealing with that situation, not really sure what I need to be doing, and just also nervous and super excited and nervous and in my own head and just a million things trying to process at the same time. I was just like, I don't know what to do anymore.
You want to hear a secret?
Sure.
I was confused as hell. I was left questioning, what are these fish actually doing? Because this is weird. Again, when they're condensed, and they're in a creek mouth, and they're gulping air, occasionally chasing some fish, little bait fish, they're easy to some degree. They're easy to cast at and probably get to eat. It's another thing to land one. But when they're out onto a flat, and that was one of I would say one of the first times, but I've seen it maybe one or two other times. But when they're on those flats, it's much more difficult to get them to commit. And granted, we threw one fly at them the entire time.
Yeah.
It was a gurgler. Maybe if we downsized to a smaller minnow, that could have worked. Something that was a little bit more subsurface, so they weren't having to come up to go get it. Because I noticed that a lot of them did not gulp too much. There were occasional gulps in the schools,
but it was a lot of just subsurface, just tiny little back shows up briefly.
Yep, you could see that little bit of that fin, that thread fin on the back of them. That's such a giveaway of a tarpon. It's
the other thing that was going on too, for me at least, was I was fully expecting to be able to start sight casting to them. The way the sun was, the way the water clarity was, I was in my mind, I should be seeing these things.
Yeah, and we just couldn't. And unfortunately, the wind started kicking up. We had to get on out of there. The glare was getting bad. Our sight casting opportunities were becoming thinner and thinner for the day. As we're starting to run on out of this creek mouth, what did we run on into, Pete?
Well, all of our expectations of who could get up that creek were blown to smithereens.
Yeah, some guy in an old action craft
rolled up in
and was like, "Hey boys, how you doing? You leave some for us?"
I think though, I will say though, I could kind of see it in his eyes when he saw us. He was like, "Dang, someone beat us here."
Oh man, these boys already put hurting on them.
And so
we had to do some maneuvers.
Oh yeah, geez. Yeah, so luckily we caught him at the creek mouth.
Yeah, instead of running.
Or else I think we would have had to put the Sabine half into the mangroves to get past him. So,
which we did regardless.
I did, yeah. But no, we had to do some maneuvering. We got out of their way, and then we were able to finally snake our way back out of that little zone and get back to something a little deeper.
Unfortunately, right as we enter on out of this creek mouth, it was dirty.
Oh, yeah.
The back water was dirty.
Because that was our next plan.
Yeah.
We were going to come out of that creek and just start fishing immediately, but we hit that main creek and it was milkshake.
And so that's one of the things that I think is so different between Texas and Florida is we do have these strong tide cycles. And we do have an influx of water that comes from, offshore inside and brings dirty water on in if it is blowing outside. Again, this is one of those scenarios where we had a couple of good days of weather, and unfortunately the weather was kind of picking up.
Oh yeah.
if you guys don't understand, there's a blizzard going on right now up in the Northeast, and we were fishing prefrontal conditions of that nor'easter.
And we were starting to see them.
Yeah, we were starting to see it. So that dirty water was like an immediate telltale sign for at least me and everything that I've known. I put on my guide cap and I was like, we need to run out front. We need to get out of the backcountry and get out front, because the tide had shifted and it was an outgoing tide. So it was going to be drawing that dirty water on out and cleaning up the front. Unfortunately, this is where I take my guide cap off and someone comes in, snatches it, and runs off with it because I don't deserve it. I'm sorry, but it's true.
Yeah.
You know, it shows my inexperience of... I've fished that zone for years, but infrequently I have fished it.
Yeah.
And that infrequent and lack of knowledge really played into day one, regardless of, you know, your buddies who happen to be guides and who happen to fish that spot, you know, every single weekend. Yeah, this is what to do. You just never know until you go.
No, and I think that's, you know, that's something too, is like you can have all the intel in the world, but, you know, when it comes to fishing, as soon as you get off the water with that bit of intel, it's old news.
Yeah.
And the next day doesn't mean it's the same as the day before. And, you know, you can plot, you can plan, you can scheme, you can research, but the bottom line is to learn an area, to know how to handle a situation. It takes time on the water and personal experience.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky, you're fishing with somebody that has that personal experience.
Unfortunately,
and
this time. Unfortunately, this time.
Wasn't
us. Sorry to cut you off, but I had to at least chime in. Day one was that.
Oh.
We fished the backwater. We found fish.
We found them.
We felt comfortable. And then the water got dirty. And my brilliant galaxy brain was like, yeah, let's run out front. What did we find out front, Pete?
What's the front like? Jesus. We're going to talk about this. You want to talk about this? Do you want to talk about what happened in the front?
It was awful. It needed a beer. Or 6. Maybe a 12-pack. Or a 24-rack for all of us. The front was...
So the back... When the back was dirty, it was like if you had a root beer float and it's kind of been mixed around a little bit.
With that ice cream?
Yeah. And the front was like...
Creamer? Coffee creamer?
Coffee creamer.
I think that's the best way to put it. It was coffee creamer and, Pete...
Which was fine.
Yeah, but...
Because we'll find clean water. We'll find it. But then somebody... decided that we were gonna cut through.
No. I was gonna say, like, what was that wind like?
Oh, in true weatherman fashion. The forecast was about 10 knots too light, and it was
tooting. It was a toot.
Let me just say, if we were fishing Texas, it would have been just a normal day, but
not in Southwest Florida. No, what you look for is calm conditions with light and variable winds.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean by light and variable in Texas. It's 10 to 15, and I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Not what I expect. But yeah, we came on out of that cut, and it was just howling in our face.
This isn't what we were hoping for, but we'll make it work.
Well, yeah, we're going to try and make it work. And I think the biggest problem was immediately that we had an outgoing tide mixed with a due west wind.
Just kicking every bit of water over.
What were those waves? What were those waves like?
We came out and we had like Alex said, we had an outgoing tide with the wind pretty much not directly into it, but into it enough that we had some nice chop. We were dealing with some good solid 2-foot chop, which just goes in and mixes up every little bit of soft silt, soft sand on the bottom, and just churns it up and creates this coffee creamer, disgusting, not sight cast fishing conditions at all.
So as I'm seeing this, I'm thinking to myself, well, where the hell do we go? I'm like, I'm lost. I'm like, I've never really experienced this over here. So let's go here. We're going to go to this little bite and, pull on through this little cove, and then we're going to come on the backside, and we should have wind protection. That's the game plan, Pete.
It was a solid game plan. I mean, you know what? It was a solid game plan.
Yeah.
If I was gonna look at a map and I was gonna be like, where should we go? I'm gonna find a leeward side that's probably gonna have cleaner water, and that's what I'm gonna look for.
What I didn't expect is for it to be 2 inches deep.
Yeah. So we came off plan. We were gonna pull. So what we were gonna do is we were gonna pull through this cut. So we came off plane and decided to pull through the cut so that we could make a stealthy approach to the other side. And we probably had, 100 yards that we needed, 200 yards that
100,
we needed.
150 yards is a good estimate.
Yep.
It's a good estimate. The bottom was muddy.
The bottom was muddy.
It was not really ideal to pull through, but we gave it a send. We gave it a send.
And so get into our position, start pulling, and I start hearing the bottom coming against the bottom.
I'm adding some sound effects for you.
Effects.
Some SFX right now.
So I start hearing the bottom coming across sand, and I'm looking off to the left, and I'm like, all right, you can see some exposed mud. I'm like, all right, so obviously this bank comes off a little bit more than I thought it did. So I start trying to turn the boat, and all right, that's not working. And then just finally it's like, all right, we got to push.
Yeah, I think what ended up happening was you were pushing and then it stopped and you kind of were like, yo, I think we're stuck. And I was like, nah, no, we're not. Not in this beam. No, there's no chance. So I step on out and I sink at a minimum of 2.5 feet.
Oh my goodness.
To my knees.
To your knees.
I sink directly to my knees and more. In mud, and I'm like, oh boy, that's bad. And granted, it was 2 to 3 inches of water, and then it was just mud.
And then at the same time, knowing the boat, I'm like, all right, well, let me get out and push, because up ahead of us there was some wading birds, and I've gotten to a point fishing where I'll start looking at the wading birds, and I know all right, if it's up to their bodies, the boat can float no problem. So I see these ibises, they're up to their bodies in this this little cut that we're going to go through. And I'm like, all right, all we have to do is make it up to where those birds are. The boat's going to float no problem. And those birds were probably, maybe 20, 30 yards ahead of us. So it's not like pushing the boat that far. It's not like something I haven't done before. I'm not thinking twice about it. We'll suck it up. We'll trudge through knee-deep mud and 2 inches of water, and we'll get the boat over there, and we'll be good to go.
Pete strapped on his little flats booties and got to work. Both of us got to work until I was cut up. Oh my gosh, I was cut to hell. Every single shell, oyster, clam that I could find with my feet, I found them. I was bleeding like a sieve. I mean, if I just poured out this beer right now, that's what I was kind of bleeding like. So Pete strapped on the boots and he got his little blue collar working attitude on, and he got out there and pushed. And I give him mad props because I'm like, yo, I'm bleeding like crazy, and I'm not trying to be a pansy, but it's probably not smart that I just continue to cut and shred my feet. I'm going to hate myself, later on. He was like, Alex, I've got you. Just hold on, get up in the front, and we're going to get on out of here. A brisk 30 minutes later.
Yeah, so we got up to where the birds were, and I guess they were, knee deep in mud as well, because there was not enough water to float the boat still. So we ended up having to push the boat the whole 150 yards through this cut to get to deep enough water that we could finally get up and pull. And I mean, this wasn't like just mud, like pluff mud. Like if you're, trudging through pluff mud in Charleston, this was like mud full of shell. So you're not like, it's not like you're just getting cut on your feet. I've got cuts like all over my calves, and all over my shins. Yeah. So like, I actually at one point like I had long pants on and I actually rolled them back down just to protect my legs.
Such a weird concept, right? Yeah. You're like, let me roll up my leg pants and get after this.
Let me keep my pants rolled up so I don't get them too wet. And then I'm like, no, never mind. I'd rather these things get torn up than my legs.
It made it an adventure for day one.
Too much.
Yeah, and I think at that point I was like, I hate myself for even thinking about this spot as a potential option. And honestly, at that point, I'm looking at the conditions and I'm like, oh my God, we're not going to catch anything for the rest of the day.
And I was thinking to myself, I hate Alex for this spot.
We were both I think we were unwell at that point for the day.
My goodness.
Our thermometer reading was just like opposite. It plummeted. It just plummeted. We were not doing good. But we reconvened and we started to work some outer islands and we were seeing fish, but unfortunately with this dirty water, and this strong wind, we just weren't able to actually sight cast.
And the other issue we were having is the water was super low.
Yeah, the water
hadn't filled back in.
So again, we had that outgoing tide and unfortunately we just hit it at the wrong time. And this is something that I think was a great learning experience for us, as well as myself, that I already know that the tides are extremely important. But for that zone, reading the tides, knowing when to be in what spot with the tide is hands down the most valuable piece of knowledge and experience that anybody could have in that zone. Plain and simple. If you know a tide's going to be at a certain point in a certain spot, work around that. And we just played in the back country for too long. And so it blew our entire schedule off course. And we tried to salvage. We tried to salvage that time outside. And unfortunately, it just didn't end up panning out.
No, not quite. But we stumbled into a few redfish.
Yeah, some freaking gray ghosts of redfish. They looked like the coffee creamer.
Oh, my goodness.
Have you ever tried to decipher coffee creamer from coffee creamer?
I'll be honest, I don't think there was a single fish that I didn't see till he was behind the boat.
Yeah, kicking up a plume the size of a freaking nuclear mushroom cloud. Like, we spooked more fish than I think we saw all day. Mm-hmm. And by that, I mean in the backcountry. I'm not talking about like total.
No, we definitely, I mean, we were running into some redfish, but it was the same thing. It was just like, if you're sight cast fishing and you can't see them until they're behind the boat, it ain't going to end well.
No, we were seeing fish, but they weren't in the right zones for sight casting. So we spent at least 4 hours out there.
Way too long. And so, but that's where experience, plays in is, like when I first started trying to figure Texas out, I would spend way too long on flats that weren't producing. And that's just experience of spending time doing the wrong thing to where the next time you go into that scenario, we see dirty water, we're not seeing fish, we're bailing.
I'm out. I am so far
Find
out.
Something else to do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But we did decide to change things up at the end of the day. Do you remember where we went?
No.
We
trying to remember where we went.
You want to take a guess?
That was we went to backcountry.
We went to where we began.
God, why can't I remember the end of the day? I think I just spaced out.
Well, you were truly
Blood loss.
you were truly enjoying the sunset.
It was freaking. I mean, yeah. I mean, I texted Lindsay, my wife, afterwards, and I was like, "Dude, we got to come back here. You got to see this.
It's cool.
It's so cool.
It's a really, really cool spot. I mean, if anything, if you can't stroke the fish, you might as well just enjoy the place you're in.
Yeah, that's the famous last words of a bad fisherman.
Yeah, and guess what?
I think we were even saying that.
And that day, we were like, "Oh no, what's the quote that you said?"
Oh, I think I said something like, "Man, that's a beautiful sunset." Famous last words of a bad fisherman.
Yeah. It was a telltale sign that, hey, it's time to go. We have been on the water for 11 hours. And we need to get the hell off and re-game plan this entire shindig that we're on. And so we did.
We did. We got out of there.
And you know what we did back at the hotel?
Slept.
No. We ate some of your famous brisket.
Oh, yeah.
And we went to town on trying to figure out a new game plan. So much so... I'm sorry. I just had a voice crack. So much so.
It's all right. Puberty's tough.
So much so that we had to bring in backup. This is where things turn for the worst for a man named Kieran Hoffman.
Hey, and you know what? I'm not sorry because he's not here.
Yeah, no, this is called.
He's gonna regret this when he hears this
because he had an opportunity to do this.
Yeah,
but he chose differently.
Yep.
So from here on out, this is the roast of Kieran Hoffman.
Day 2, the roast of Kieran Hoffman,
and the quest
for the 12-inch fish.
I love it. That's fantastic. I mean, so we didn't have, I think, the highest of expectations that day, did we?
You know what? Going into day 2, like after day 1, I just
2 ladyfish that were the size.
I thought I was reliving my first excursion down there. I was like, nah, I already know how this is gonna all play out.
Yeah, Pete's got 2 ladyfish to hand. He's shaking off another 4. Truthfully, but he's got 2 ladyfish that were literally the size of these Bud Light cans that are sitting in between me. So we called in backup with this man named Kieran, who I'm good buddies with, but you have had a little bit of some conversations with.
Yeah, I'd never met him at this point.
But what has he told you in the past?
Honestly, from talking to him, basically that we're gonna go stroke 40-inch snooters and
I'm sorry,
50+ pound tarpon.
Okay, I'm sorry. You said snooter, and this man, he calls...
That's what he calls them.
Yeah, he calls snook snooters, and I love him to death. It's so funny. It's childish. I used to call snook snookies. You know, like Snooki from the Jersey Shore.
I didn't think they existed.
Yeah. They're like They're like you wearing camouflage pants. I didn't know that you were
can't
just...
see me.
I just didn't know that you had legs.
Exactly.
But we called in backup. Pete had talked to Kieran before. He was a good buddy of mine. He's put me on some big fish. I'm not going to lie. But I'm thinking to myself, this kid has some knowledge. At least we have another person on the boat to blame.
Exactly. That was actually the mentality that I went into day 2 with is at least now we can blame Kieran for everything.
And we did have a game. We did have a game plan.
Yep.
We did have a game plan that at least I felt was a little bit more well-balanced and specific to tides.
Yeah, and it was definitely do better. The top 2 lists on the game plan were number 1, do better. Number 2, do the opposite of the day before.
Catch fish.
Yes.
And, you know, I think that we had seen some fish on the outside. Enough so that we felt the water might be clean.
Yep. You okay?
Yeah, okay. The water might be clean, and we might have opportunities with a incoming tide to see tailing fish or waking fish. How did that go, Pete?
Chocolate milk.
Chocolate milk.
Yeah, so we roll up. We went not through the cut of death and went to the outside, rolled up to the first spot, and it just murky water.
The conditions were not that bad, right? Like the wind had laid down with that.
No, the conditions were perfect.
It was cloudy, which isn't great for sight casting. It's not great, but you can manage it.
You can manage it.
The water clarity was the problem. The one variable out of like the 5 other variables that go into fly fishing and sight fishing fish was just out of whack. And I think we forced it until like 9:30. By the way, we were out on the water at 7.
Yeah.
And we forced it until 9:30. And then finally we just kind of said, this isn't going to happen.
No, but we did a lot better job day 2 of not spending too much time in one spot. We'd fish a spot, call it, move, fish a spot, call it, move. And we did that 3 times. Yeah. And finally we were like, this isn't the move.
Yeah.
And in our original game plan, it was we were going to start out there and then we were going to start working towards the back. And the conversation kind of went, this isn't working. It's still earlier than we want to be in the back, but there's no point wasting time. We know the fish aren't here. Because we went from at least the day before we had seen fish, and this to the day 2, we weren't even seeing them.
We ran back on in to a spot that we had not fished the other day.
Right.
And this is a spot that I have had countless luck at in the past. I wanted to save it for day 2.
I've had luck there too.
I know you have. But I didn't want to spoil you right in day 1. We had to work
from
hard.
now on, just spoil me in day 1.
I like making you wait for the best.
22-hour drive, you can spoil me.
Listen. When I came down to Texas the first time,
I'm bringing hot dogs.
When I came down to Texas the first time, I didn't get spoiled. Oof. I got blown on out. So I had to make you work for it day 1. But day 2, I knew for a fact that this zone in this pocket was going to hold fish.
Yep.
We didn't find fish where I thought they would be.
No.
You made some great casts against the bank with the gurgler.
Dude, I was stroking that fucking fly into the bank.
Pete was going between different actions and rods, so his cast was like all over the place for times, but as soon as he got dialed on in, he was throwing laser beams.
If there had been snook there, like, they don't know what they missed out on.
Bro, I've fished that exact bank multiple times with gurglers, and when there are snook there, every other pocket,
it's just got one sitting in it.
It literally looks like someone takes a cinder block, like a chunk of a cinder block, and just goes bloop. We would have seen them. So you did everything right working that bank, and this is where the roast of Kieran begins.
Actually, I don't know, because I wasn't really. You'll have to key me in, because I wasn't really part of the conversation that you guys had about our next move.
I, at least in the past, have been told, don't go into that creek. It is too tight. Kieran says, no, we're going. There are fish back there. And I'm not talking about any old fish, but tarpon.
And I'm thinking, and these guys are like, all right, they're conversing. I'm on the bow, working my ass off.
Looking like a silly Texan that's like, hey, I'm just trying to catch a snook over here. What are you boys doing over there yelling at one another for?
and then they're like, all right, Pete, we're gonna move. I'm like, all right, great. So I jump down, get the motor running, and I'm like,
where to?
I'm like, all right, and start motoring out of this place. And they're like, no, we're going into that creek. And I'm like,
which, mind you,
what are you talking about?
Yeah, mind you, the creek looks like.
Actually, honestly,
like a cabinet door.
Honestly, if you were to drive if you were to be in this area, you would know that there was a creek there, but you would never think twice about trying to go up it.
No, I don't think you would. It is a tight window.
Because the last time I was there, we had a discussion. We were like, there's no way you can get in there.
And yet, Kieran was adamant that, yes, you can go in there. Yes, it is loaded with fish. And yes, we will have to do some bushwhacking. To honestly put it, I was somewhat skeptical, but also really believed in the kid. And I was like, screw it. Let's do it. You know what? We've been in creeks yesterday. Like, it'll be tough. It'll be a little bit challenging, but we'll make it through it. Did you think it was going to be that bad?
You know what? Honestly, if there's one thing that I have to say about that experience is that I was really proud of the teamwork on the boat.
It was all over the place. It was organized chaos.
But I mean, like, so like this creek was like to get the boat. Oh, this creek was like to get the boat through it. Like using the motor to turn the boat wasn't enough. And I thought that you and Kieran did a great job of when I needed you guys to, of kind of holding on to something to help turn the boat. And so we fought.
And your boat saw the ramifications of that fight.
My boat is trash still.
It looks like it got into a fight with like a professional boxer, and it was like some high school bully that thought he was tough, but it got black and blue really quick.
I'm pretty sure the next time that Brian sees my boat, he's going to take it away from me.
That, or he's going to say, you know what? You've been fishing so hard, you deserve a free detail.
Yeah, well, that would please.
That would please you. Yes, it would. So we bushwhacked, and honestly, I threw a couple of branches back at Pete and smacked him in the face a few times. I felt bad about that. Teamwork, right?
We did.
Teamwork.
Here I am trying to focus on the good parts. Hey, we ended up with a hitchhiker too out of that deal.
Yeah, but let's talk about that when we get on out of that.
So we finally make it through this creek.
Mind you, it took all of 25 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
With how slow we were going and pulling and prodding. And as we enter on out of this creek, I mean, what was the first thing that you saw?
Open water and no more trees coming at my face.
Oh, it was like a blessing. You're like, thank God.
Oh, there actually is something back here.
Because there were a couple times when we would take a left and actually we were supposed to go right, and we're like, oh fuck.
Goodness.
Excuse me. I just cursed.
That's what they make editing for.
I love editing.
No, so we got in there, and the first thing I thought was, God, I hope there's fish in here for all of that effort.
I had a eagle eye set on me.
Yeah.
I'm going to re-say that. I had damn good eagle eyes right away as we entered on in there. I immediately looked back into the farthest corner in the glassiest spot, and I just like locked onto it. Like I'm currently locking onto your eyes. And they may have started to water a little bit because I was just so intently looking at it. And all of a sudden, all I saw was just a little bit of silver. Just gulp some air and go back down. There were tarpon in there, man. There were tarpon in there thick.
So I immediately went from, thank God there aren't mangroves coming at my face, to, please don't mess this up again.
Round 2 was in your sights. And truthfully, I picked up the rod for the first portion. Like I was, not first portion. I immediately picked up the rod and I was like starting to cast. I'm like, I'm going to throw the gurgler against the bank and probably catch something. And then I was like, all right, Pete actually needs to catch a fish. He needs to catch a worthy fish. Like, okay, here you go, Pete. Like, here's the rod in your hand. And we start working down the bank. We take it slow. We're seeing fish. They're a little far away. So, hey, we're going to take it slow. We're not going to like run up on these fish. That's not the right thing to do. And finally, we put you in a position where you were able to make casts close to these rollers.
So we start slowly easing into this zone, which from a beginner standpoint was definitely something I took note of being around these tarpon. And the boils are getting closer and they're getting closer. And, you know, I'm kind of blind casting, and you guys were keying me in on as soon as you see a boil, try to get it in as close as you can. And then even to the point of like, watch where the bubbles come up, and that's the direction the fish is moving in. So try to get it in that direction. So, finally I'm working that. We're working a little bait fly, and I'm working it, and finally it gets hit, and strip set, come tight, fish goes flying. I'm just like, in my mind, like,
is this real?
What just happened?
And mind you were two-hand stripping, when's the last time you two-handed stripped for a fish?
The last time I was... No, I don't think I ever have.
Dude, it looked super awkward for you at times. Like the reel was, the rod was like tilted sometimes.
Oh, God.
It was, I mean, you were doing your best, and I could see that. But you were also like, what is going on? This is not fly fishing. This is weird.
It doesn't, I'll be honest, if anyone ever decides to go out with the Kieran and Alex guide service, just be ready, because they both are great teachers, and they just don't know how to take turns teaching.
No, the Chihuahua in me came out. I started barking, and Kieran, same thing. Just it was like the two Taco Bell dogs coming together, or it was like the Taco Bell dog and his clone fucking came together and just started chirping at Pete nonstop. But this is where I think this overlay of audio is going to be better, because we can make at least somewhat salvage this poor man's, both me and Kieran's freaking career. We can, it's going to cost our career because we're such assholes. Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is what I'm going to say. The fight lasted for roughly 45 to 60 seconds. And how would you go ahead and explain the feeling of just looking down and actually seeing that small glisten in the water?
Honestly, like, I couldn't believe it. Like, it's one of those things, like, you get into fly fishing and you start fly fishing, and you sight cast your first fish, whether it's, or you catch your first fish on fly, whether it's a trout, whether it's a redfish. Maybe you're living in a place where, snook and tarpon are readily available, but as soon as you catch that first fish that you've sight casted to, or however you've caught it, you immediately just start building this list of fish in your mind that you want to catch on fly. And I don't think there's a single fly fisherman, no matter where you live, that doesn't have tarpon, snook, permit, bonefish, redfish, brown trout, rainbow trout, cutthroat trout. Like, those species are on everyone's list. It doesn't matter what you normally fly fish. Any fly fisherman you talk to is going to tell you that they want to catch all those species. And so I'm looking at, like, this fish next to this boat, and I'm like, I did it. I actually have caught something that I've set out to catch. Just this, I'll be honest, like, there was a huge part of me that just wanted to give both of you guys a hug at the same time. But at the same time, like, in my mind, it's like, I know you want to do that, but that's going to require a lot of moving, and there's a lot of fish still rolling, and you just don't need to spook the rest of them out.
It was my job to land that fish.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. That was one of the slipperiest tarpon I've ever touched in my entire life. I'm grabbing the leader, trying to grab his mouth, grabbing his tail. He's just like, nope. And
I'm just thinking,
I'm going to lose this fish.
He's going to lose the fish.
Yeah. I thought the same thing. I'm thinking, Well, one, Pete's going to get another one, so it doesn't matter. But also, like, let's just get him his tarpon. And I think there's something to be said about anybody on a boat, the teamwork that goes into it, everything. Getting to hold and then pass off that fish to the rightful owner. Okay, that's not the right way to put it.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, but getting to hold and then pass that fish off to you, there was a little bond. There was a little electricity in the air. It's cool, man. I remember my first tarpon. Granted, not that big, you know?
Mine was way bigger.
No. But, you know, we all upgrade when we catch a fish. Unless you were just lucky as balls and you catch a slot or trophy size fish as your first fish, we all need something to upgrade to.
Yeah.
And I understand that 12-inch tarpon was not the biggest or most rambunctious of the sort, but it gives you a great starting point.
Yeah.
I mean,
just that little tiny tarpon, you know, you learn a ton about fishing for those fish.
You got a master class in how to fish just tarpon. For how long did we fish that pond? Like an hour and a half? No, 2 hours?
2 hours. Yeah,
2 hours plus?
We were back there for a lot.
And you got a little bit of a master class in terms of just like how great education for any angler when you get put into a scenario with juvenile tarpon, which again, Pete, what do they look like?
The big ones.
They look identical. It's like if someone made a shrink ray and just went boop right to a 150 pounder and just shrunk them on down to all of 12 inches. There was another fish.
Yeah, so we let him go. I mean, obviously. Hopefully that's obvious. We let that little guy.
We don't kill tarpon, right? In Florida, we don't kill tarpon. In Texas, shark bait.
Oh my goodness. We're not going to get into that.
We're not going to get into that.
If you're doing it, please stop. So
For God's sake, please stop. Just appreciate the fish.
We let him go and you know, the fish in the area, you know, they're still rolling. So we start moving again. And
you're laying dimes. Like dime after dime, right in the right zone, pockets. That's what you're fishing for with those tarpon, right?
Yeah.
You watch them roll, you watch them bubble, you fish them in their pocket, you let that fly get down a little bit low and pull it past their face, and they come up and they swoop at it. And then, you know, you watch that boil happen and you're like, tick, 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 tick. Yeah, your knees are shaking,
Stop
your arms
missing.
trembling. And with these little tarpon, right, there are bigger fish involved.
Right.
There are 10, 20, 30-pound fish out there that are going to go ahead and clap that fly. You just never know.
Yeah.
So every single fish is a mystery. It's like a box of chocolates.
So the first thing we did after that fish, though, was we decided to go ahead and we made a decision. We caught that little guy on a 8 weight, and we went ahead and we switched over and set ourselves up. Basically, we knew that there were juvies in the area, and we wanted an opportunity to just basically sit there and stroke fish all day. So we went over, we switched to a 6 weight,
and I got selfish.
And Alex, while we're still getting everything settled out, Alex jumps up on the bow for a little bit. And
Pete was kind enough to like pick up the camera, film, and see if I actually get one. Lo and behold, right?
The second cast.
It was the second cast. I actually got a decent one. Like,
yeah.
Like I would put that fish in that like 2.5 to like 4 pound range.
And immediately you got yelled at.
Yes, you know why?
Because I was supposed to be.
That was Pete's fish. That was Pete's
still
fish.
Blows my mind because like I'm so used to being on the back just to have it. I mean that was really awesome with Kieran because I'm so used to being on the back all day or most of the day and Kieran was just like, nope, I'm gonna pull you guys around all day and I don't care. But no,
I think we started this off by saying this is the roast of Kieran, but now it really sounds like the praise of Kieran.
We're gonna get to the roast of Kieran.
It's coming.
It's coming shortly.
But yeah, I mean, the goal of this trip is to put you on the right fish. And I'll be honest. I was a little selfish. I was like, ooh, rod.
I didn't care.
Let me cast this. Yeah, Pete, you went like, okay, let me film this. Like,
yeah,
that's the best thing about what we do is we film and we fish. So if we're not fishing, we're filming. But I went ahead, I got up and I cast that 6-weight. And I was like, I'm on it. Let me actually cast at these fish. I'm taking the rod and nothing's happening. Make another cast. Taking the rod and nothing's happening. I'm like, let me look up in the sky. Let me not pay attention. Now, I didn't think to myself, let me not pay attention. I just started not paying attention. Straight up, as soon as that happens, tick, 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 boom. Fish launches right out of the air. I'm not paying attention. I'm holding on to that line tight. And he goes, 1, 2, 3, shake. And shakes that fly right out of his mouth. And I'm getting chirped. I'm getting hella chirped so badly. Oh, this big guy from Florida, he's caught tarpon before. You should know how to bow to the king. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Like, at least I was going to say, at least I jumped one. But, you know, it doesn't matter. You can be the most epic tarpon angler of all time. You're going to lose the juvies.
Yeah.
And I think you learned that too.
Oh, man.
I got off the bow. I jumped 2 and was like, all right, I am taking away fish from Pete. So let me give it back to the king, the one that has actually landed fish. And we proceeded to cast at what? How many rolling tarpon do you think you casted at in the next 2 hours?
Probably anywhere from, you know what? I wouldn't be afraid to say 100.
I was going to say about 100.
Yeah.
I was going to say about 100
Constantly.
rolling tarpon.
Yeah. And I mean, of that 100, probably about 20, 25 hits, boils, rolls right on top of it. I'd say I probably jumped, I don't know, what do you think, 4 or 5 of those to the point that I've jumped more?
I would say you jumped at least 6.
6.
You jumped 6, which is a good day. That's a good day.
I could do that all day.
Yeah, just watching those little guys jump.
Day.
Yeah, watching those little silver bullets pop out of the air and shake their head, and you're just like, but yeah, like awesome.
But then, you know, we were working this small little area, messing with them, and then we started seeing some bigger rolls, a little bit out towards the middle, fairly still somewhat concentrated. So it wasn't like the day on the first day where we were seeing them all over the place. They were still fairly concentrated together. So we started letting the wind kind of work us towards them, and I'm casting, and finally, like, come tight on. You're a better judge of how big those things are.
I would say it was probably in like that 3.5 to like 5 pound range. And again, right, my estimates are pretty wide. It's because you don't know until you touch them.
Yeah.
You don't know until you actually go ahead and feel it. But I mean, it was a solid fish from a starter perspective. It's a nice.
I was pumped.
It's a nice upgrade.
Yeah.
I mean,
this was actually like, this is going to be slick.
And dogged you too. Dogged you.
And, well, he just wanted to hide under the boat.
Dude, you know what that was? That was a redfish tarpon.
Oh my goodness. I was like, what are you, like, go jump around and do tarpon things, and all you want to do is sit underneath the boat? Like, come on, man. Like,
get up in the air.
You're letting me down.
I'm filming this entire thing, and I'm like hoping, like, when is he going to jump? When is he going to jump?
I know. Like, we're trying to get some sweet tarpon jumps.
I gave Pete some advice. There's a saying with tarpon. It's to fight him down and dirty, right? That fish moves left, you pull right. That fish moves right, you pull left. I think, Pete, you took that to heart too much.
Well,
a little too much.
Like, all he wanted to do is, it was funny because it was, you ever fought a tuna?
Yeah.
Like, they just go down to the bottom and they just want to sit there.
And that fish,
that's
literally
all he
lived.
To do.
You know what? That tarpon loved your Sabine.
He just wanted to hang out with the Sabine.
He was like, oh, this is such a nice looking boat. Such a good looking boat.
So I had him pretty much like, if
he was done.
He was done.
That fish was done, and he needed to get landed.
He was, I mean, we need to get that hook out. We needed to let him go rest, recuperate, and grow to 150 to 200 pounds.
Is this where we start to roast Kieran?
This is the roast of Kieran.
Thank you, God.
So this tarpon, he's next to the boat. He's dog tired. I'm getting chirped at left and right by Kieran and Alex to where it's a cacophony of sound that doesn't actually sound like words anymore. And Alex is filming and Kieran's on the platform.
And this fish is ready to come in.
He is just chilling next to the boat, ready to come in. And I'm like,
this man needs some help.
I'm like, I know I got to keep this line tight. So normally what I'll do with the redfish is when they're tired, you get them close to the boat, you pull in a little extra slack of fly line, and then as you go to grab them, you let that fly line pop, and then that keeps you from breaking the tip of your rod. It lets that slack out, lets the rod go free. And the redfish is tired. He's going to stay right next to the boat. But I know with this tarpon, like I can't pop that line, so I got to figure out how to keep the rod away from... so it doesn't break while I go to grab this fish. And again, I know what Alex is getting ready to say. I can't understand a word coming out of either one of his mouths because they're both getting louder to try to make me hear them, but they're just getting like mumbled up together. So I get off the platform to go and grab this fish.
You needed an extra hand.
I needed and this is something that I learned with tarpon fishing.
They have jaws of steel. It is cement. It is the hardest surface known to man.
Until you get off of a polling platform to go and pick your fish up out of the water.
Yeah. So tarpons' mouths are literal. They are literal bone. The hook point never really gets on in there. You have to hook them in the button. You have to hook them in the corner. It's one of the hardest fish to appropriately hook and land. I've personally hooked and landed giant tarpon. I say giant. It was 50 pounds on an 8-weight. That's a big fish for an 8-weight.
Yeah.
But I hooked him in the button. Those juvies, you're not going to hook them in the right spot. So you need that extra hand to come down and pick it up. Unfortunately, who didn't pick that fish up?
Kieran.
You had to.
Yep.
And that's not your fault.
Nope.
I can adamantly say that's not your fault. You thought you did the best job you could do.
And honestly, like the fact that Kieran was still up there, I was like, all right, I guess it's my job to get him to pick him up.
Yeah, I mean, from a filming perspective, in that scenario, I was like, dude, come on down. Help Pete out. Like, this man's from Texas. He doesn't know how to handle tarpon. Come on, get.
Yeah, so as soon as I start to reach down to grab this fish.
Mind you, he's underneath the boat.
Yeah.
Like hugging the other side of the hole.
So I've got to like get the leader away from the boat to get the fish up more to the boat so I can grab him. And basically, as soon as I start this maneuver
and pull that line,
the fly pops out.
That is the name of the game. Kieran, if you're listening to this,
which you should be,
Pete,
it's your fault. 100%. I did everything I was supposed to. And then I had to try to do your job.
This poor Texan, he's never caught a tarpon before. I'm not a master. No. I've caught a few. And I know better than anybody, there's a man in the middle of the boat with a camera. He ain't touching that fish.
He ain't touching that fish.
Now, granted, I touched that first fish because I was like, screw it. I'm making sure that fish is getting landed.
We're getting that fish in the boat.
But I'm like filming this time. I'm like making sure we're trying to get jumps. I'm making sure we're trying to get jumps. I'm trying to make sure that we're getting, Pete with that rod just doubled on over. I'm just making sure that we're getting all the right footage together. And Kieran's up there just, what was he doing?
Yelling,
but was he polling?
I don't know. I remember I was the tarpon. I was focused on the tarpon.
I agree. I mean, he was like keeping us in place when we had another.
I think I would have been okay if like after the fish came loose, Kieran had handed me a ranch water, but he didn't even do that.
Wow, I didn't even recognize that. I feel like that would have made me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, if like that situation ended with Kieran holding a bunch of ranch waters for all of us, I think we'd all have been like, okay.
Yeah, you know what? You came with an offering, but you displeased the gods, but you have come with an offering.
See, and this is where like he should have been here to speak for himself.
You know what? But he chose not to.
Nope.
And that's okay. That's a choice. That's a personal choice.
You make choices in life. You got to live with consequences.
Got to live with consequences. And unfortunately, on the Skiff Wanderer, on the Skiff Wanderer channel.
So we're making a whole podcast dedicated to roasting you.
Oh, and it's only going to get better.
What we did do after that I thought was the right thing to do is we, instead of immediately going back to fishing, we took a minute. Because I was so confused. So we took a minute and we talked through the entire process of what needs to happen. Because
when you say we, I was talking a lot. And it's not to like, I'm not trying to be a dick, but I'm also trying to be blunt in the fact that, hey, one, that fish was important.
Yeah.
You know, yes, we're here to catch and have fun, but at the same time, too, if there's a fish on the line,
we're trying to land it.
We're trying to land the fish.
Well, I mean, and it's not even like
we're trying so hard.
I mean, a lot of it, when it comes down to it, obviously, from a film or photo standpoint, we want that for the fish, but at the same time, like there is also the aspect of like, for that fish's own safety and health, like we don't want to stress them any more than we already are.
A quick, clean capture photo sesh. I'm talking like 15, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Nothing special. Back in the water, quick revive, release.
Yep.
It's important because a man traveled how many miles? 1,300, 1,600 miles to come down to Florida for an opportunity at this fish.
Yeah, I'm at 1,900 on this trip right now.
We're not trying to butcher the fish and like leave them out high and dry on the freaking aluminum of the Sabine.
Yeah,
no.
Kieran.
Yeah. If it just felt like a missed opportunity that needed to get corrected immediately. And I took it upon myself to be like, listen, Pete, do not touch that line.
Right.
Kieran, that is on you. You need to come down here. And he's like, oh, we'll get another one. It's fine. It's fine. I'm cool with that attitude. Like, I'm totally cool. But like, again, quality fish. We don't know if we're going to hook another one. He's got the optimism.
Like it.
Love the optimism. But let's be realistic here. And this is the name of the game with filming fishing.
The optimism never pans out.
Optimism never pans out. And this is pessimistic talking, not realism. Optimism never pans out. You got to make the most out of your opportunities. And I felt for Pete in that moment. Like, that would have been a trip saver. That would have been a hell of a piece for this trip. And maybe you see some footage of this. Maybe you get a chance to get a glimpse of that fish. But I think I did a pretty shit job of filming, honestly.
I think we were all so excited.
I was so excited for Pete. I was just more concerned about Pete and like getting after it. There are some shots here and there, but you guys will see that. I did chirp. And I did bluntly correct Kieran and Pete on what to do and not to do. And, Kieran chimed on in.
Because I started asking a lot of questions.
Yeah. And, it's not like, hey, we're the masters and you don't know anything. But at the same time, too, it's like, we know you haven't fished for this before. Yeah. We know this isn't your run-of-the-mill fish.
Right.
Hey,
there's books about catching these fish.
There's books.
Not just one. Yeah, there's books and
not
films.
Not a single book.
Not just one. There are like guys that dedicate their lives to catching these fish.
And I think that, at least I come from a side or a standpoint of passion. It's like, I want to see other people catch fish.
Yeah.
And I want to see them land them, because I have been there for those moments when I've got a giant fish or someone's got a giant fish on the line and I've watched it pop, and it can make or break their soul, their entire soul, man.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, like, that fish wasn't going to make or break your entire soul, but it was like, hey, that's an upgrade. Hey, that's a good fish. Like, it's nothing huge. It's not a, 30-pound tarpon where you can actually pull it out of the water briefly, and show it to a cam and then pop it back down and then release her. It's not a 150-pounder, but it's a 3.5. That's, 20 inches, 22 inches. It's at least got another 10 inches on your other one. Like, it almost doubled the size. Like, that's
doubled that.
That's impressive. I wanted that fish for Pete. And so I made it apparent to be blunt and say, Kieran, that's your fish to touch. You need to come down here and help Peter out. Pete, do not touch that line.
Don't touch the line.
Do not touch that line, right? I would much rather be in Kieran's hands, who has handled tarpon before, than Pete's hands, who's going to try and grab the mouth. He's going to shake, and then he's going to lose the fish.
Because that was the other thing going through my mind is like, I don't even know how to pick this fish up out of the water.
And that's okay. That's okay. And like, I mean, shoot, I learned on the fly as well. Thankfully, I hooked him in the button. But like, most of these juvies are not going to get hooked right in their nose. No. It was a tough scenario.
Yeah.
And I felt bad that you had lost that fish, because I knew that fish could have been landed.
Oh, 100%.
It should have been landed.
Like 10 minutes before he broke off. I mean, not 10 minutes, but
no, like, definitely a long time.
10 minutes.
Dude, it really did. It really did. I think that was the highlight of the day. I think that was the highlight of day 2, except your 6-inch Jack Crevalle.
Oh, we're going straight to him?
Yeah, because the other part was blowy and dirty, and
right, we tried to the fast forward version. We tried another spot. It was full of nothing. We left.
It was awful.
It was awful.
It was like,
we left.
Oh, why did we come back here again? Oh, because someone told us that this was a good joint. By the way, we also saw like 12 guides back in there. I guess that's the windy spot to be in.
Apparently, that's where you go if it's windy.
Yeah, so we got the hell out of Dodge and went to some other place that I didn't think that other guides would be. Guess what? There was a guide there.
There was a guide there.
Damn it.
We played hopscotch with him for a little bit too.
We really did. I was like, He was following us. We were following him. But we snuck on into this back little bay, very similar to day 1.
No, we were using that heavier fly.
Yeah. We tried to get down.
The bank. Yeah, start working the bank because the water was a little bit deeper, so we used something a little heavier to get down a little bit. Start working it, and I watched the most ferocious and aggressive and most beautiful tiny little Jack Crevalle just come up out of the mangroves at 100 miles an hour and destroy that fly.
It was so epic. It was so good.
Proud of him.
It was, you know what? Kieran said it was 6 inches. I will give you 8.
All I know is that if you've been watching the Skiff Wanderer long enough, you know that I have a quest for Jack Crevalle that is untouched, unfinished, and still very much alive. So I catch my first Jack Crevalle and fly, all of 8 inches, super pumped, sort of pumped. Maybe it was the ranch water at that point of why I was so pumped.
Oh, God.
And get him over to the boat. Kieran, who does not want to get yelled at again for not landing the fish, quickly lands the fish.
But
as soon as he lands the fish, I get off the platform, set the rod down on the platform,
getting ready to hold,
turn around to grab the fish. As I'm watching Kieran, not like the nice release shot, just like that's a fish. Here we go. And I just look at him and go, "What are you doing?" And he's just like, "Dude, that was like 6 inches." I was like, "That was my first Jack Crevalle." And he's just like, so? I'm like, ugh.
I'm over in the back. I'm polling at this time. I'm like, dude, that was his PB.
What? Kieran, don't do that.
I'm like, we just had a long conversation about, hey, content is content, my man.
And then to just pour salt on the wound, he gets up and fishes a Modelo out of the cooler and goes to close it without offering anyone else one.
Peter, that was a nice little Jack Crevalle that you got.
Dude, you know what? Like, I know he was small, but he put in the aggressiveness. He put in the attack. He did everything on his end to earn at least a little bit of spotlight in his life.
And a little bit of respect from you.
And a little bit of respect.
He clapped that fly.
Dude, did you see it at all?
Oh, yeah, I did.
He came 100 miles an hour. I was like, is this a piranha?
Yeah, deep in the Amazon.
Came flying out. Like, he deserved that. He earned it.
Yeah.
And then he just got tossed back in the water like a brim. All right, so we got done with berating Kieran again on
this time.
Poor.
At this time, he was, I think he recognized, okay, next fish.
Actually, you know what I think came out of that?
What?
That was when I think that was about the time we got I only fish for fish that I need to use 40-pound leader for.
Yes, Mr. 40-pound, that's all I use.
Oh, I only use 40-pound leader.
Oh, you know what? Have you ever run into somebody at the gas station who has a really nice car? And obviously, you drive a truck. I drive a shitty Volkswagen. It is what it is. And you're like, hey, man, really nice car. And he's like, yeah, I just got it. It's a 2022 Porsche, blah, blah, blah. All high and mighty, right? All high and mighty. There are other people out there that are very kind, very gentle, and also very appreciative that you want to show appreciation. This man, Kieran Hoffman.
I only fish for fish with 40 pounds.
Yeah, no, if it ain't 40 inches, I ain't throwing at it.
Well, all right. So,
listen, have you ever been to Texas?
Dude, Texas would take him to school.
You know what? Texas would really humble him. And thankfully, I've been humbled by Texas. So I actually know. I actually know what I'm talking about here.
So we move locations again. And we decide that, you know what? We got one last spot.
Listen.
Let's go.
Listen.
Let's go find some where we know there's a fish.
Listen. I made the executive call. And I'm gonna pat my freaking back on this one, Pete. I'm like, listen. You had an opportunity out of snook yesterday, and you blew it. You blew it. You blew it like a Georgia fisherman. And I said it loud and proud. And guess what? I'm like, we got one opportunity.
One shot.
Just seize this moment. Would you capture it or just let it slip? Would you just let it slip, Pete?
So
I'm like, it's snook time, baby.
we go back to Trout Set Cove.
Trout Set Cove was the spot.
We roll in there, we get set up, and Kieran jumps up there real quick on the bow.
Which he deserved. Yes, he pulled her. He pulled both
deserved
of us
it. Yeah, at that
around
point,
all day.
He had.
Yeah. He deserved at least one fish.
And I think, second cast?
No, it took him a good 5-6 casts down the bank.
He puts a snook in the boat.
The snook, which, Peter, what'd you say you thought of snook?
They didn't exist.
Yeah, no. And I landed this fish and I was like, look, Peter, they exist. I'm like, hey, look, buddy, they're real. And guess what? You lost a couple yesterday.
And I would just like to point out at this point that this is the first time I've got on the pulling platform of the day and immediately put someone on fish.
It is 4:00. We started at 7 a.m. Do the math.
I'm just saying. So if you take the amount of time that you pulled that day and that Kieran pulled that day, I had the best pulling to fish catch time frame ratio.
I think I was right behind you.
Yo, obviously.
I was definitely behind you.
Kieran just put in hours.
Yeah, he put in hours. I mean, maybe he just doesn't know the right zones.
We got to teach him how to pull a boat better.
Yeah, definitely pull a boat better. Guide us on some fish better.
Definitely.
But
no, so we got that snook in the boat. We let it go, and then I was up again. And
immediately, it was
you cast it out.
I cast it out.
Got chirped at for casting it out.
I did. I was like, you know what? Maybe we're in the right spot, so I'm going to give it a cast. Again, my selfishness. I sit behind a computer a lot of days. I edit film. It is what it is. I love to fish. It's my first passion. I try and at least cast a rod.
I would hope so.
Yeah. I got to stay loose.
If you're going to work for a fly rod company, you might as well cast one every now and then.
I need to stay loose and goosey for sure. And I was like, Pete, if you catch a fish on this cast, and it was a 30-foot cast, he had time to strip on
in the right place.
Into the juice.
It was in the right place.
This was juicy fruit territory. I'm like, you owe me half that fish.
That's fair.
That's fair. He was like, it's fair.
It wouldn't have been a lot of a fish, though.
No. Unfortunately,
it didn't work out for you.
It didn't work out for me. But what also didn't work out for you?
What?
Your GoPro angle.
Oh, jeez.
Get ready for the best angle of any hooking and setting and catching a fish you will ever see.
So we had the GoPro 10. We had some confusion on batteries and batteries dying, so we just said, screw it, we'll switch to the 8. And the 8 that I have has a body on it. And when you put the body on the chest mount with it upright, it basically just is a great view of my feet.
They're phenomenal feet. They're phenomenal feet, by the way. You could be a foot model.
You clearly haven't looked at them.
No, they look beat up and worn and torn, and it looks like you went to Antarctica and
wear
played
shoes.
footsies with penguins.
My feet are not in good shape, so enjoy that, guys. So I get up there, strip in Alex's cast, much to his dismay. Don't catch a fish, and cast it back out.
How many ticks did it take you to stroke that fish?
2.
He came up and
destroyed it.
It was epic.
It was everything you dream out of a eat, and was able to fight him. Had a conversation at a decent tone about who was going to land the fish.
I took the obligatory option to be like, you know what? I'm going to bring this fish to hand. Mind you, I struggled a little bit again. Maybe my landing skills are not up to par.
That might have been more slippery. No, and that was a slippery fish.
Yeah, the slime. You got to feel you got to feel tarpon slime and snook slime in one day.
Not Jack Crevalle slime. Thanks, Karen.
That one hurts.
Yeah. So we land this snook. And we get him in the boat, and I'm pumped.
Oh, hell yes.
I'm pumped. We did it. We came down here on a mission, and our mission was get Pete a tarpon, get Pete a snook, and we did it.
Get him out of the hell. Get him out of this place immediately.
Get me some redemption, and we did it.
You put 5 fish in total? You put 5 fish.
Yeah, it's a 400% increase from the last time.
Yeah, no, it was a great way to cap. It was a great way to cap off this struggle. I mean, again, Pete, I may have hyped this place up, and it was for good reason.
Though, in your defense, I know what this place is capable of producing.
You look at every bank, you look at every slot and every bite, and you see the vastness of it, and you just go, yeah, this is probably going to be really good.
I'm just the idiot that keeps showing up when the weather's terrible.
And I am that same idiot.
Actually, every time we fish together, we have to battle weather.
But we do find one good day.
We keep finding fish, though.
We do. It's not like, hey, Pete, where are the fish today?
We don't need 3 good days of fishing, just one awesome day. Or the quest for the 12-inch fish day.
And day 2 was the quest
For the
12-inch fish.
All right, guys, we need to get some sleep. We got a big day tomorrow. We got to go chase some redfish. Hope you guys have enjoyed listening, watching, experiencing all this. Hope you guys picked up some tips. Hope you learned something. Alex, thank you again for having me out here.
Absolutely.
If you haven't already, make sure you're following Alex.
Never follow me. Don't follow me on socials. Don't follow me anywhere else. What you're going to find is fly fishing content that is sporadically placed each month. Don't follow me.
And check out what Alex is doing with Renegade. I think that for our age group, anybody that wants to get into fly fishing, I think it's a great group of guys. It's a great mentality. And honestly, I'm 100% behind it. I love it. The rods are awesome. You guys should check that out. And if you haven't already, please leave a review. If you're listening on Apple, on Spotify, on iTunes, on all those podcast places, if you're watching on YouTube, hit like, hit subscribe. And until then, stay tuned for some Florida redfish action. Thank you guys so much. Good night.